Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Live, Laugh, What? I'm Liv, and in today's episode, you have been waiting for this. I've been waiting for this. Frankly, we haven't done this since 2022. We're talking about the final chapter of The Summer I Turned Pretty, and finally going back 3 years later and saying, okay, what do we think after 3 seasons these characters' types really are? Having seen them now as teens all the way into adulthood. And so I am so excited to do this with you. We are coming up on the end of season 3, which is bittersweet, but I also feel like it's time. It's time for this to let go. I think it's had a good run, but we're going to be actually splitting this episode into 2 parts because there's a lot to talk about, and I'm also going to be comparing my current typings of these characters with what I originally typed them as in the 2022 episode. If you haven't listened to that one, definitely go back and check it out because that was all about season 1. And this time I'm kind of really just diving into season 3 and maybe highlighting some things from season 2, but it's really going to be mainly focused on season 3. So if you want to hear why I typed them as what I typed them back in 2022 when we only had 7 episodes of season 1, go check that out because I do think it's kind of the foundational layer to what I'm going to be saying today. So check it out. Like I said, we're splitting this up into 2 parts because there's just a lot to cover. And so in this episode, we're going to be talking about Belly, Steven, and Taylor. So we have like one relationship, one single, and then we'll be doing Conrad and Jeremiah in a separate episode and also kind of diving back into Belly and like the relationship dynamics in that episode. So be sure and check that out next week. But this episode, we're going to start off with, of course, I feel like this is the most controversial character of this whole entire flippin' show at this point. It's Belly. So first off, Belly, and it's hilarious because I went back and watched the episode from 2022 and I was like, why is this still the case? Like, she is so complicated and I don't know what is going on. But I ended up typing Belly as a 6-wing 7. And okay, you'll see me looking down at my phone a lot if you're watching the video version of this because I have so many notes and I also detail what I said about them in 2022 in part so that I can relate it to where we're at now. But in the original episode, when we only had the first 7 episodes of the series, I was like, okay, she seems very confident, very like sure of herself. I said that she had good boundaries. I also mentioned that I think the fact that she did grow up with other boys kind of like helped shape her in a way and made her more confident. I think generally what you see is girls that have brothers or like really close, with their cousins or whatever, they maybe aren't as awkward around boys when they're young and things like that. And so I was saying that I think that plays a role. I think the fact that she, is competitive, like all these things kind of wrap into her entire person. And I actually typed her as an 8 back in the first episode. Looking at it throughout the last 2 seasons, I definitely don't think so. I actually think there's another 8 in the mix, and you'll hear about them shortly. But I do not think she's an 8. And I really do think that she is a 6-wing 7. And some of the things as I was watching this season, I'm jotting down notes from episode 1. I was like, no, 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 we have to know what is going on here. So one thing that I said was that she actually is really good at reframing for others and was able to bring in truth and facts when people are struggling. And this is something that you'll see with the 6. They're called the devil's advocate. 6s are really good at helping you see both sides, and they're really good at, if you're like, oh my gosh, like this huge problem is going on. What do I do? I feel like I can't think about it any other way. Like I'm just too close to the situation. They're able to come in and look at, number one, the facts without sort of that emotional bias. And they're also really good at putting themselves in the other side's shoes and saying, well, like there is the potential for X, Y, and Z. And so it's funny because 6s really need somebody else to bounce things off of because, like I said, they are so good at seeing both sides that sometimes they end up with like this analysis paralysis and they just cannot get outside of the analytical process. They're like, I am fried. Like, I need help. And, I think we kind of see her going back and forth between that, especially when it comes to her relationship with Jeremiah. And she is someone, again, this is why I also chose 6 because she felt so loyal, like to the bone. Like she was gonna make sure this wedding happened, even though she was still kind of like, ooh, do I like Conrad? She's like, I'm not going there. And I also do think one thing I pointed out in that previous episode was that I said she had a lot of self-respect and good boundaries. like I mentioned. But, we see that still, but we also see kind of, because six has a connection to nine, six has a connection to nine and three. And I think what we see from her sometimes is almost that bit of nine, like denying yourself and shoving down what you truly want because number one, like if you're a six, you want to stay loyal. You want to make sure that you don't hurt other people. And, we see her kind of flip back and forth sometimes between being a little bit more counterphobic, which, if you're like, what is counterphobic? That is the sexual or one-to-one subtype six. If you want to know a classic counterphobic six, Tris Pryor from Divergent, I mention all the time, classic. We see her kind of go back and forth between that, and that's one reason that I think she maybe did go to Paris. And I think that's also why she is good at keeping boundaries. And, I'll point out some other things because I feel like I'm just going to get in a rabbit hole here, but she was such an interesting character to me because nothing about her was like spot on. And I actually mentioned that when I looked back at the other episode. I was like, there's so much about her that seems kind of like this enigma. Like it's like a little bit this, but it's also a little bit that, and it's this, but also that's what happens to sixes when they go to test for the Enneagram. They're answering these questions, and the classic thing that happens is you're reading these prompts and you're going, well, it depends. And you can't like just kind of generalize an answer. Like a six, they are famous for saying, I don't know, I mean, it would depend. What's the situation? Like they don't have just a straight answer for you. If they were an eight, they'd have a straight answer for you. They would know 100% what the deal is. And if you've ever met an eight past season one, like it just, 1000% she's just not an eight. Some other things that I wrote for Belly, she does know what she wants, and although she desperately wants the support of her family, we ultimately see that she makes her own choices based on what she believes is best for her. And, in this one like struggle that I had with the show was I feel like they're kind of putting this bad name on marriage and especially getting married young. And that's something that I am passionate about. And I'm like, why are we over here like trying to make it sound like young people can't make good decisions? Like I know old people that can't freaking make a good decision to save a life. But we see that Belly pushes back and it's sad because you see her so badly want to please her mom and like she desperately wants that relationship. And when she doesn't get it, she's deeply saddened, but she also is very good at honoring herself and saying, I know what I want. I know I can make smart choices and I have to do what I need to do. And not in a rebellious way, but in a true, like I said, honoring yourself. Like, I know what I need and you are not getting outside yourself enough and being there for me. Like, you're so self-focused that you can't be there for me and be a support system. And so that's something that I think is really great about the six because they often do rise to the occasion. And I think we don't credit sixes enough for their ability to make good choices because they do have so much of that back and forth with themselves. Like I said, they oscillate constantly about should I do this? Should I do that? I don't know. And the analysis paralysis. So I think it was really cool to see her say, no, like I want to get married. This is the right thing for me. Whether or not it worked out, her making that decision was a huge point of growth, I would say. So I did like that. The other thing is she does want to do the right thing, even if her heart isn't fully in it. And she does self-sacrifice and not out of a like a prideful way of like, once again giving myself for the other person, like it's very intentional. That's the best way I can put it. It is intentional and it is something that she does deeply care about. If you could see my note, you would crack up. I literally have in all caps fled to Paris with like 7 question marks, is staying even though it sucks because she quote hasn't gotten what she needed and hasn't changed yet. And that for me was so bizarre. Like that whole episode, I'm sitting there like, what are we doing? Like where are we gonna go from here? And it's hilarious because you're probably sitting there remembering the part in that episode where the episode before that where she's in Paris and her backpack gets stolen. And what does she do? She hunts that sucker down. And you're probably like, okay, on what planet is a six going to literally hunt someone down? Like, don't they kind of want to run away from fear? Because remember, the six's core fear is fear. So you're probably like, how is that computing? Honestly, this is what I think happened. Remember, six goes to three in stress. And so I think she was really pulling on some of that three fierceness. And she's like, we are not playing this game. And good for her. And she got it back. And I think it's really cool to see how she developed. And she kind of goes through this like roller coaster where, again, in season one, she seemed so sure of herself, even though like her internal world was kind of chaotic because she wants to be accepted and loved, but there's also this like deep knowing of who she is. And like I said, she has good boundaries. She knows what she's going to put up with and what she won't. And she just is very classic six to me when I look at it from more of a deep perspective. The last thing that made me go 6.7 is because Susanna said in this last episode that we saw, I think we're one episode away from the finale, Susanna says, "You've always been a girl who knows her own heart." And you know, sixes really do. Like, they know themselves in their core. And I think because of childhood wounding, there's this back and forth of like, I feel like I know, but also can I trust myself? Because this didn't work out and this didn't work out. And this person told me that I shouldn't, da da da. And so there's again that oscillating. And to see someone actually like championing the six, saying like, you do know what's good for you and you do know what you want in your core, that is really special. And I think that's something that I hope every six gets because that is so needed. Next up, we have to talk about Taylor Jewel. This is a character I did not type originally in that first episode that I did, but she is such a big part of this season. And, you know, even throughout season 2, we do see her more integrated into the main cast. And so I think it's definitely appropriate to mention her. And I also think it's really fun to show her and Belly's friendship because that I felt like was the anchor point in this whole season. So Taylor Jewel. Oh my gosh, wait. I forgot to do Belly's tri-type for you. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Okay, so I think that Belly's tri-type, so originally I said that she was an 8-7. That was kind of what I was getting because I felt a lot of like 8-2 and 7 sprinkled throughout that first season. I think now, obviously with her type being a 6, I feel like we're seeing some 6-9-4, I would say, because the interesting thing with her is that a lot of the kind of two-ish qualities that I think some people pick up from her, I think is really just her being a 6, because remember, 6 gets mistyped for 9 and 2 all the time. And so I do think that there's even play for potentially her being a 6-1-4, but I think in a lot of ways we see her being a little bit more 9-ish. So I'm gonna say 6-9-4. I think that 4, you know, she does kind of have like that rich inner world that you'll see from the type 4. I do not think it's a main type by any stretch. The 4, remember, their core fear is rejection, and you do not see that at all with Belly. I think she actually has been doing very well despite all the rejection she faced from a childhood crush. So honestly, like I think it makes a lot of sense. You know, she is looking at Paris as like this really cool opportunity and there's like the beauty in it. And we do see her have, again, like I said, that rich inner world where she's thinking a lot. You know, we hear her narrations and there's this depth to her that I think really echoes that type 4 in her tri-type. Now let's move on to Taylor. So Taylor Jewel, I typed as an 8-7, and it's so funny because for so long I thought she was a 3 because she wasn't one that I originally typed. I was kind of like seeing her and whatever. And honestly, I made the mistake, like a lot of people do, when they see someone that is kind of bold and loves like fashion and they care about their appearance and they are the planner of the group. I think a lot of times they get slapped with the 3 label, even though you cannot say someone's a type 3 just because they like all those things. Taylor is somebody that we see a lot throughout this season, especially when it comes to like her and Steven's relationship in those first few episodes. She's somebody that like she doesn't need you, but she needs you. And remember, 8 has a connection to 2. It's so funny because Taylor is just one of one. You know, she just does her thing. She wants people in her life. She does want the community, but she does not need you. And that's something where I think it's special to see Belly with her because she and Belly balance each other out. Again, I think Belly's really good at like playing devil's advocate, but on the opposite side of the spectrum, Taylor is very good at calling Belly out on her crap and also saying like, are we even considering this? Like, you deserve better. This is so dumb. And even at her wedding, Taylor's like, I don't think you should do this. And a lot of types would be like, I am not going to rock that boat. Like, I'm not going to be the one to say that. But in 8, They are truth tellers. They are justice oriented, and they will tell you the truth even if it hurts. And they don't do it because they want to hurt you. They do it because they truly love you and they want the best for you. And so a type 8 is willing to risk the momentary discomfort, or the potential for an outburst from you in order to potentially save you from hurt and to bring about, like I said, justice and rightness to a situation. So that is something that I feel like Taylor really just added to this series. I think she's very underrated, and I feel like she is really like the linchpin of this whole thing. And we do see her take on a parental role in her family, which is funny because a lot of times, and I described this before in another episode, and I cannot for the life of me remember what episode it was, but a lot of times what you see with type 8s, they actually, as children, ended up being given or taking on a lot more responsibility than they ever should have gotten as a kid. And so they almost kind of take on this like child parent role, and they kind of go back and forth between it. Sometimes it's they were left in charge of younger siblings and the parent wasn't there a whole lot. Maybe it's kind of like latchkey kid. And so they take over a lot of the parental duties in service of younger siblings. Sometimes it's maybe a parent had some accident or dealing with some sort of illness, and they take over kind of the caretaker role there. Sometimes it's only child and they're just like party for one, and they had to learn to be their own friend, be comfortable being alone. And that's something that I do love about 8s, because I think a lot of types are like, I wouldn't be caught dead eating by myself at a restaurant or having to stand up for myself and not having like, the mom friend at the group do it for you. And that's something that I do feel like we see a lot of type 8 single children. So I don't know what's all going on in the story here. Taylor is an only child, so maybe that's part of it. But her mom is almost like her friend, like it's a friend mom. Taylor, wants to make sure that the burden of life doesn't get placed on other people. Like she'd rather take it on because she knows she can handle it. Again, classic type 8. Some other things that I had for her, she's extremely loyal. Obviously, she is a ride or die. And like I said, even if she has to call you out, she does it to ultimately better things for you. She tells the truth, even when it could hurt, out of love. She can make friends with anyone. That was something that I loved seeing about her in this season. So we see her, visit Belly in Paris, and she's just like partying it up with her friends. Like she doesn't give a crap. She's like, I don't know you, but we're gonna party. And I think that's a great quality to have. But what was the other thing? There was, oh, yes, the house party in season 2. I love that episode. That was so fun. Oh my gosh, this is 100% your look, Connie, baby. So I think it's really fun that Taylor can move in and about different people, and she doesn't have that like self-conscious kind of energy. I hate to use the word energy, but when there's someone that like isn't really part of the group and you can just tell it's like they want to be liked. It's just like, it's kind of gross. She never has that, and type 8s don't. So that's something that I really liked seeing from Taylor in the last 2 seasons. And again, I chose a 7 wing for her because, like I said, she's party for one. She is outgoing, she's spunky, she's fun, but she doesn't really care what you think about her, even though she kind of does. Like, she's not made out of armor. She does let some of those things seep through. She actually reminds me a lot of Kristen Cavallari in Laguna Beach. Like, I think they have the same kind of vibe, and that's something that I talked about in the Laguna Beach episode. If you're a big fan of very, very, very early 2000s reality TV, check it out. I have a 2-parter on that one as well. It is so fun. But let's go ahead and round out the episode with Steven, because obviously Steven and Taylor, did they have a ship name? Staylor? Teven? Anyways, I ended up typing Stephen as a 3 wing too, which ironically is what I typed him as in that first episode I did. And I couldn't remember what I typed him as. And it's so funny because as I'm watching the first bit of this current season, you see him with the high profile job. And you see him with the Beamer, and you see like just he's kind of flashy. Like he does care about looks and he cares about dressing well and all that. What I think is so funny is I'm thinking back now to season 2 when he graduates high school. He's the freaking valedictorian because obviously he was talking about something that he did. Oh, he got like all those scholarships for college. He's like, I got this one, I got that one. Like, it's all good, it's sorted. Like, he's got like 5 scholarships. He's chill. And it's funny because even back in season 1, I'm like, he is doing these jobs and he's willing to deal with the struggle of having a summer job and multiple of them because he's focused on his goal of making money and setting himself up. And again, 3s are goal oriented. They're called the achiever for a reason. Steven is someone that has had his life mapped out. Like, since he was born. You know what I mean? Steven is somebody that I think is really cool to add to this whole dynamic because remember, whatever type is in, I'm going to try and explain this easily. So we have the heart triad, which is these 3 types. So it is a 2, 3, and a 4. Whatever type is in the center of a triad is typically the one that is repressed on the thing that they are in the center of. I hope this is making sense. I'm going to explain. So we have 2, 3, and 4. 3 is in the middle. It is repressed for feelings because they are in the heart triad. So they actually come across maybe a little bit more logical and kind of repress their feelings. Another example, we have the gut triad. So we have 8, 9, and 1. So the 9 is actually kind of repressed in their gut. So like I said, I've said this so many times, check out the Endless Love episode if you want to hear more about type 9s and kind of the relationship with anger. I actually have a reel coming out on that soon, so be sure and check it out at Hey It's Liv James on Instagram. But the interesting thing is, like the type 9, they, instead of the 8 and the 1, when they feel something, you can tell. It is immediate. The 9 actually represses it and kind of like shoves it down. And then what happens is the 9 ends up bursting and they will like have a full blown outburst. And they actually can tend to be the angriest type on the Enneagram because all that bottled up emotion like pops. So that's again what I'm saying. It's so funny because Steven is technically in the heart triad, but kind of is also repressed in that area. So I just think it's funny. Like he is just someone that I enjoy watching and he's really kind of similar to Taylor, but almost for the boys. Like Taylor is the voice of reason for the girls, and Steven's the voice of reason for the boys, which is why I like Steven and Taylor together. But Steven is very much like, I have to do what's right for me. And we do see he gets involved with Denise trying to start their own company. And he's somebody that isn't afraid to take a chance on himself. And he does want to do right by other people, but he's also like, I have to do what I need to do. And he's a very healthy 3. I actually think he's probably, I'm thinking back to other episodes. I feel like he's probably the healthiest 3 that I've typed in a long time. He is a great character, and I think that he's somebody that adds a lot of depth to the show. You know, like I said, he is somebody that he's not going to shy away from calling you out and having a problem with you if there's a genuine reason to. He's somebody that is super loyal, but also he's not going to overlook massive issues with you out of loyalty. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. But he is somebody that I think Belly is so lucky to have in her life. And, you know, same for Taylor. I feel like Taylor really met her match with Steven. I feel like they complement each other so well, but a 3 and 8 together. So remember, the aggressive stance are 3s, 8s, and 7s. So a 3 and an 8 in a relationship is like so wild, but I love it. Some things that I wrote down about Steven specifically. Oh, he plays the long game in his job. And, you know, that's really just to set himself up. Like, he knows his job kind of sucks. He gets called in at all hours because he's kind of low man on the totem pole. But again, he sees the vision for where he is going, which is so important for men. He sees the vision for where he is going, and he is a true leader. And because he knows where he's going, he can lead other people. And that's what I think is so fantastic. And that's what I love. Like, even him and Denise, I think they're great together for business. She is so fantastic and they balance each other out well. They call each other out on their crap. He also really protects himself from being hurt. And that's something I didn't mention with Taylor as well, but I'll mention it here. What we see with them in the beginning, they both are types that don't want to feel rejection and like putting themselves out there emotionally and then getting wrecked. Not that any type wants to feel that, but some are more willing to do that for the sake of like a relationship than others. So with Taylor, remember the 8, they have their guard up. They really do not want to let people in to their inner world unless they feel that they are safe. They're more like, hey, come over here and I'll keep you under my wing. I will, you know, protect you. But they don't so much want to be in a position where they're open to being vulnerable, to being emotionally manipulated, hurt. You know, even in a relationship that's going super well, you never know when their health could tank. They could die. And so there's all the different things of life, you know, and sometimes just for the sheer fear of this person that they love deeply and have opened themselves up to emotionally being taken away or something happening to them, the 8 could kind of retract and say, like, I don't want to deal with that. It's too difficult. I'll stay by myself because I'm good as a lone wolf. Whereas the 3, you know, like I said, they're in the middle of that triad, and so they kind of are repressed in the heart. And so a lot of times they'll kind of like deny their emotions and they will look for other avenues to get that expression out. And so with Steven, he's like, I just don't think I can go through this again. If it doesn't work out, he's going to be crushed. And that's what he says to her. And for Taylor, hers is more, I don't want to get rejected when I've opened myself up emotionally. Like, I can't do that again. Because remember, 8 has that connection to 2. And 2 is like, I don't want to feel like I am not special and needed in this person's life. And so that's what we see for Taylor. For Steven, as a 3-wing 2, he also has that connection to 2. And that's again why I do think they do work well together. But Steven is more like, I am focused on my goal, and we've done this before and it didn't work out, and I don't think I can take the turmoil of that happening again potentially. And what we end up seeing is that they deny it, but there's still this chemistry there. There's still kind of this spark between them. And finally, Steven's the one that's like, we probably should just cut the crap. I think we actually need to do this. And he's at a place where he is so solid and he really knows himself and he's willing to take a risk. And that's something that I do love about 3s and 8s. They are willing to take a risk when it comes to things that they're like, this is something that I need to do. And so again, I think that's why they both are like, we'll just try it. Like, there's too much here to let that go. And they're both such loyal types that I think it ended up working out really well for them. And I think it was actually really great for them and probably a huge growing point for them in several areas. Okay. I think the last thing was, in the original episode, I gave Stephen the tri-type of a 3, 6, 8. And I want to revise my head triad typing for him. So instead of a 3, 6, 8, I want to say he's a 3, 5, 8. And what we saw from him more in this season, like in his work setting, he has these niche interests. And I also think he devours knowledge about things that he's interested in, which is typical from a type 5. That's someone that, he does work in a space where you have to have a lot of like insight and knowledge into very particular things. He also has so much knowledge about gaming. And, when you get a 5 that's super into their niche things, they will be chatty Cathy. Like, they can seem so shy, but then say that they're really into stocks. You get him talking about stocks, you won't get him to shut up. And so that's what I think like we see from Steven. Like, I just think there's more 5 there, and there's the depth of that 5 with him. So I really do think that he's probably a 3, 5, 8. And that is the end of this episode. Be sure and check part 2, where I'll be talking about Jeremiah and Conrad and their relationship with Belly, because I think it's so important. So be sure and check out clips from this podcast and previous episodes at Live Laugh What Podcast. And be sure and check all the other fun behind the scenes content. I always post like a vibe post is what I call it with each new episode, where it's behind the scenes photos from the cast and crew and all that stuff from your favorite TV shows and movies. So check it out at Live Laugh What Podcast on Instagram. And also, hey, it's Liv James on Instagram, and I will see you then.